Going to discuss some maxims, is the word we use in English, Maxim in French, written by La Rochefoucauld. He was a 17th century French thinker, man of letters, and he put together a collection of maxims, as he called them. A maxim is a short, usually, perhaps witty, incisive, cutting through, clearly as possible stated observation about human nature, especially. Number one, human nature. Number two, the human condition, what it means to be a human being in this world. These two, the most fascinating of all subjects. And La Rochefoucauld's observations are among the sharpest ever made by any human being. I'm not the only one who thinks that. Anyway, I will not read the French to you. I'll only translate these and then discuss them a little bit with you, make some comments or observations. The first one I will cite is very short. The mind, let's say, is always the dupe of the heart. Okay. Pascal is more famous for this observation, and he made it before La Rochefoucauld, for that matter. Pascal is famous for having said, the heart has reasons that reason doesn't know. What both men mean by the heart, I would say, we still use the word heart, and we still have this false dichotomy, two opposites, very different. This, I would call it a false dichotomy. In fact, maybe all dichotomies are false. False dichotomy, head, heart. And we assume that head means thinking clearly, avoiding emotion, and heart means emotion. Well, this, I think, is kind of ridiculous, and everybody knows it's ridiculous. We think maybe more with our hearts than with our heads, so to speak, and we feel maybe more with our heads than our hearts a lot of the time, accepting these terms. They're unacceptable. But generally, it's a way of discussing what we are. In this case, the mind, or head, is always the dupe of the heart. The dupe is the fool, meaning the mind tries to figure things out, but the heart is always really in control, and what they mean is that the heart even controls the mind. That is, my reasoning takes me where I wanted to go in the first place. That's one way to put it. My reasoning takes me where I wanted to go in the first place. Now, yesterday I brought up that famous cliché poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And I only discussed the first part of it, and that's okay. Remember, the traveler is walking along the road in the woods, and then suddenly the road divides into two, and he must make a choice. And this is symbolic also of choices that we make in life. He looked down one as far as he could, he says, then took the other. He never tells us that he looked down that other, he simply took it. In other words, his heart made the choice, while his reasoning pretended to be reasonable. Is it pretty safe to say that this is what we do in almost all of our big decisions? I think it is. Experience bears it out. Frost certainly thought so, and I think most readers of Frost's poem would agree too. That's what it means. So the mind is always the fool of the heart. The mind, this means, let's convert this into other terms. In religious belief, people who are religious and think about what they are professing, theology is the attempt to find reasons to justify what the heart tells us is true, or tells some people is true. That's what theology is. It's perhaps a very good illustration of the point. The mind is the dupe of the heart, and that's okay. My final observation, which I made from the start, is that, of course, this is a false dichotomy. These are not two opposites. Really, we are one person. This is the Hebraic, Hebrew Old Testament approach to human beings. Dualism supposes head and heart, spirit and flesh, body and mind. A unitive position, which is basically the Old Testament's position. The Old Testament doesn't know about any difference between spirit or soul and body. It mostly rejects that contrast and claims really that we are one united person. And I think that is much more convincing than our dualism. I think the Old Testament thinkers understood, maybe intuitively, that is, they just felt it, that when we make decisions, we are making the decision. The heart is making that decision. The mind is making that decision. You can't sort this out. Where does the one begin and the other end? Where is the dividing line between these two? Of course, that's absurd. There is no way to divide.